accessed the podcast of OA. Located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will, the podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the podcast of OA. This is episode number 180, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about Green Lantern Season 2, Issue number 9, listener feedback, and Green Lantern news. This is Myron Rumsey, one of your two co-hosts, and I'm joined by my good friend Phil Bova. Phil, my friend, this is the beginning of November. We're in the last throes of the year of 2020. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to 2020 to being over. I hope.
Yeah, 2020 needs to just go away. You know, I mean, people are going to look back on this year and talk about it for generations to come. I mean, I always imagine Clark, when he gets older, they're going to look back on this year and, you know, and there's going to be tons of studies that come out, but it's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's been a rough year. It's been a rough year for everybody. You know, I'm sure everybody's in the same boat and everybody's tired, you know, and I think everybody just wants to call it a year and move on.
Yeah. I can't think of a lot of anything that was good that has come out of this year so far. So I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Clark's been the only thing. As we talked about that.
Yep.
With some families the other day when, unfortunately, some of my listeners probably don't know, but my mother passed away last Monday, and she was 73. And we were talking about it with the family members about the only good thing to come out of this year was Clark. And that's been just about it, you know. And of course, the podcast, you know, we had some really, really good time doing some multiple episodes, you know, over the the COVID lockdown. That was also a high note. You know, I really enjoyed doing that, still do. But other than that, man, there's just hasn't been anything great. I mean, a lot of celebrities passing away. Sean Connery, you know, Alex Trebek. You know, it's just, yeah. Just kind of want to take a sigh and Happy New Year.
Right. I just hope that 2021 is a little more merciful than 2020 has been.
Tell me about it.
In terms of Green Lantern news and stuff, before we get into too much comic talk, I want to give a big shout out to a friend of our show, Sean Whalen from the Raging Bullets podcast. And for those that don't know, the Raging Bullets podcast is a DC podcast. Great show. Long episodes, but they go very into depth into a lot of the plots and such. And Sean is one of the people who inspired me to do the blog of OA and the podcast of OA because of the community that he created. And he is currently recovering from COVID-19. So I don't know whether Sean listens to the show or not, but Sean, if you're listening, we're behind you, and we wish you obviously the best and hope that you're back on your feet and strong again soon.
He must have had a pretty bad case of it, because he got that back. That's going on a few months now.
Yeah. It's been difficult from what I understand, but
I'm glad he's doing better though. You know, big shout out to him.
He's a wonderful guy. My wife and I went out to Cleveland. Geez, it must have been 2 years ago. And Sean lives in Ohio, and so I contacted him because I had been on his show a number of times, and one time when Bill had to take a short reprieve, he came on and subbed for me on top of doing his own show. And so I just said, hey, you know, I'm going to be going through the area. Is there any chance we could get together? And so he and his wife set aside an evening, and the four of us went out to a really neat pizza place. It was a really nice little place in Ohio, and he introduced me to a pizza that has mashed potatoes on it, which you'd think would be awful, but it was absolutely amazing.
That's interesting. It actually doesn't sound too bad, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was really quite good. But anyway, you know, the best to Sean, and we hope you're back on your feet and doing well soon. And more positive news, a couple episodes ago, I mentioned that the podcast of OA was available on Amazon Music. We're also now available on Audible. So if you use Audible to listen to audiobooks, they now do some podcasts. And if you search in Green Lantern, we're the only one that's going to come up, but you can follow the podcast that way and listen to it that way. So if you're already using that platform for listening to books and so on, we're available in that way too. So I'm not sure if there's too many platforms we're not on right now. So I'm really, it's one of the things I'm proud of. Whenever there's a new opportunity, I try to get the show out there in as many different ways as I possibly can to try to reach as big of an audience as we can.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, I think you got all your bases covered.
There's big goings-ons over at DC Comics right now. Just before we recorded this episode, which we're recording this on what we celebrate in the United States as Veterans Day on November 11th, about several days ago, DC announced that they had a new editor-in-chief. And you might recall that they named Michelle Wells and Marie Javins as co-editors. They then now have just announced not too long ago that Marie Javins is now the sole editor-in-chief. And just today, the news dropped that there was a whole nother round of layoffs at DC Comics and that Michelle Wells is one of the casualties of those layoffs. And there's not a lot of information out there. You can find some of it out there floating around. But from what we understand and what the rumor is that people who have been let go probably can't talk about it due to NDAs and payments that they might be getting as a buyout of their contracts. But the list of people that at least on Bleeding Cool, a pretty significant group of people. None of them are creatives, but you kind of have to wonder if any of the creative talent at DC Comics who have exclusive contracts are in the crosshairs as well. And if any of them are, gosh, we're hoping for the best for you guys. These are difficult times, and we obviously wish the best for all the folks that are working on the comics that bring us so much joy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just disheartening just to hear. I know throughout this whole COVID thing, like there's a lot of struggling industries and such, and comics have always survived. Comics will survive. I mean, they've been brought down to their knees before, even over at Marvel. I don't see this ending what we truly love, but it does. I mean, it does put it in a little bit of a conundrum. It's like it's sad just to hear anybody that loses their jobs. Let alone from big corporations like DC Comics, who's now owned by AT&T. But, all the best. I know Robert Venditti ended his run on Hawkman. This week was his last issue. I don't know what he's writing beyond that. You might know more with the solicits that came out, but I hope he be nice for him to jump back on Green Lantern, but wishful thinking.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is we don't know when the Morrison run is over. That'll be, we've got this 2-month hiatus coming up for Future State, and then the final 2 issues of Green Lantern. So we're looking at, sometime early next year. Hopefully we at least know what's going on in terms of the Green Lantern franchise. I hope there's positive stuff to be talking about. I just don't know at this point. The optimist in me wants to be looking forward to hearing news about more than one Green Lantern comic. But then the other side of the coin is from everything we keep hearing from different pundits and people who talk about the comic book industry is that DC is going to be publishing less books than they are publishing now. So we'll see. We'll see. Speaking of comics, I don't think you're reading Young Justice, are you, Phil?
No, I couldn't get into it.
No. And speaking of people that are high paid contracts at DC,
yeah.
Brian Michael Bendis, who knows what's going to happen there. But that series just wrapped up, and there was a bit of a confrontation between John Stewart and the Teen Lantern. And John apparently confronts the Teen Lantern. I don't read the book, so I don't know word for word, but I've seen some screenshots of the pages. But John Stewart confronts Kelly Quintana and basically says, you need to give this back. And she fights for the right of keeping the gauntlet. And John basically lets her keep it with apparently the caveat that she gets some training, which I frankly don't see John Stewart doing. But that's just my interpretation of the character. Obviously, Brian Michael Bendis thinks differently.
Whatever happened to the Gold Lantern? Is that Young Justice too, or is that another book?
That's Legion of Superheroes, and I haven't been following it. It's like it's the same with Future State. This is all future stuff. And how many times have we seen the future of the DC universe as we talked last episode? So I could really care less.
Well,
But anyway, we've got a good comic to talk about, and we're going to do something a little bit different with our listener feedback this episode. And we've got a Know Your Core segment to do.
Yeah, I got an interesting one this week.
Cool. Well, why don't we stop the chitter chatter and we'll get on to the Know Your Core segment.
All right, sounds great.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light!
All right, fellow Owens, and welcome back to another Know Your Core segment. This week, we have an interesting one that only appeared for probably about 3 issues. And she goes by the name of Cary Wren, the Green Lantern of Space Sector 2814. Now, they don't have an absolute the creator, but I'm going to assume that during her reign, during the Kyle Rayner issues, it would have been Ron Mars at the time. So, without further ado, she first appeared in Green Lantern issue number 97 of Volume 3, called Loose Ends. She actually appeared in 4 issues. Cary is first seen when Green Lantern Kyle Rayner accidentally ends up in the 31st century. She is the first person he sees right before he is mobbed by a crowd and carted off to jail. She is apparently homeless, much like he was when he first got the ring. Once the ring is forcibly removed from Kyle, Ganthet calls it back to him, and in a scene reminiscent of Kyle getting the ring, Ganthet presents her the ring in an alley. Once she puts it on, she is transformed into a Green Lantern classic costume. She then does battle with the fake Green Lantern Corps alongside Excess of the Legion and rescues Kyle. She is instrumental in shutting down their power source until Kyle takes back the ring. She is next seen in a museum with Excess, returning a stolen piece of art that, unknown to her or Kyle, was made by him in the 20th century and has become one of the most highly rated pieces in history. And there you have it, folks. Cary Wren, Green Lantern of Sector 2814.
All right, Phil. Well, we've got a new issue of The Green Lantern to go over today, and this is season 2, issue number 9. And before we start talking about what's on the inside, I got to really give Liam Sharp a shout out, because that cover is so awesome. It's such a great homage to Gil Kane. I mean, if you didn't see the branding on it as modern DC stuff, you'd swear this is a Silver Age cover.
Totally. It's my favorite cover. I think it's my favorite cover out of their run right now.
Yeah.
It has to be, hands down.
I mean, not just the design, but the coloring. And he did most of the coloring in this entire issue, but Steve Olaf obviously did some of it, and he helped him on the cover in particular. But the color scheme is so Silver Age-y.
Yeah, it's just cool. And it's got that quirkiness to it, you know, back when the comics were somewhat quirky in those times.
Yeah, it's got that sensationalistic cover. You see Hal walking in on Hal proposing to Carol Ferris, and Carol's looking very much like she did back in the 60s and 70s. Just such a great cover. I love it. You know, right down to the sensationalistic headlines and so on. Picking this issue up, I was like, this is going to be something fun, I think. You know, I think we've had a couple of issues that have been a little bit more of the typical Morrison stuff, especially the last issue that was backwards. And this one really is kind of a straightforward issue.
Well, but then again, Grant Morrison has an uncanny ability to turn it on its head.
That's true. I mean, it's maybe as normal as we can expect from Grant Morrison. Maybe we should add that advisory label to it. But the whole issue starts out with Hal testifying in front of the courts because Hyperman is on trial, and it's such a kind of a neat scene. Because I mean, first you've got all the spectacular aliens and so on. But you've got this criminal defense attorney who's arguing that, you know, he's not responsible for it. And it's almost like a celebrity trial, you know?
Yeah, and it's really cool. That whole scene on page two that Sharp does, with Hal standing in that circular spotlight or whatever it is. It's kind of like a reminiscent of Krypton. When Zod and them were standing in those little just those singular spotlights or whatnot. It's kind of cool. And he looks really solemn too. Like, but he looks serious. You can tell by his face that Jordan looks really serious.
Yeah, he's not flippant at all. He's not your traditional kind of anti-establishment Hal. He's very much, I want to put this guy down. And he says that, that he's going to do this again unless somebody puts him down. And you see all those really cool looking aliens there. And then the judge with all the tentacles is really cool looking, especially with the little glasses on his nose. A lot of fun. Again, it reminded me a little bit of Valerian.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. What about Hyperion? I mean, look at his face there, Hyperman. I mean, look at his quirky face.
He's just he's playing the role of the celebrity who's trying to get off for this, and he's smugging for the cameras because here you've got Hal very dead serious, and this guy's like, what? I didn't do nothing. It wasn't me. I'm not responsible for it. I almost thought that maybe the lawyer was going to pull up Hal's time as Parallax because his defense is the same kind of defense you might use for Hal because Hal was possessed.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But he does pull up one example and tries to discredit Hal a little bit as being a credible witness because of his, remember that death that he had, the murder that he supposedly killed somebody in the first season.
Sure.
That kind of crops back up again. But yeah, very solemn. And then the scene shifts, and I thought it was such a neat scene between Trilla True and Hal, because Trilla True is one of the things I've kind of missed is Toma Ray all these years. And Trilla True kind of, she's almost that moral compass or that grounding force for Hal and advising him, not in a lecturing way, but as a friend would help another friend.
And she really they have this camaraderie, it seems like they've had this camaraderie for quite some time, almost like she's a replacement to Toma Ray.
Yeah. And her advice is sound. These are two friends that are having a conversation, and she gives him some advice that he takes to heart. And part of it's in there. They're in the shadow of this wedding with the Hyperboy and so on. And then that's part of the trial. The trial is also not just a celebrity thing, but it's a political thing because this wedding is about to go on. And here you've got the father of the groom who's on trial for murder or attempted murder, at least.
Right. And that murder took place back in issue 5, right?
I think so. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
But, she gets Hal to think that, maybe he needs to make things right by Carol, which is interesting because, if you remember back to the way that Jeff Johns left Hal and Carol, he left him in a good place. And then when Venditti came on, the first thing he did is break him back up. And then at the end of his run, he kind of brought him back together again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, that's reminiscent of their relationship. It's that off and on and off again relationship that they both had, and it's never been a truly stable relationship in the normal sense of the word, I guess.
Yeah. I've often looked at their relationship as there's a classic Star Trek. There's an episode where Spock has to return to Vulcan to get married to someone within her range. She doesn't want to marry him. She wants to marry somebody else. And there's a series of events. And in the end, he tells the boyfriend of the woman he's supposed to get married to that after a while he might realize that the wanting is not as good as the having. And that's the situation I think with Hal and Carol is they want to be together, but when they are together, it doesn't always work out. And I think some of that's because Carol's devotion to her company and Hal's devotion to being a Green Lantern prevents the two of them from giving each other all of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they both kind of sabotage the relationship because they're like, well, I know I can't give the other person all of me, and it's not fair because I love them too much to give them less. So I think they sabotage each other.
Yeah, that's a good point. On a side note, when Hal goes back to Earth, is that a new ring ability? Because I don't remember seeing that before.
Which one?
The commencing inner space acceleration.
I think that's Grant Morrison's depiction of how they travel at such great lengths. I mean, there used to be a time in the Silver Age where they didn't actually go to Oa. They kind of like sent a projection of themselves to Oa. So I think he's just trying to show how do I accomplish the space travel, because Hal just can't fly to Earth. He's got to interdimensionally or somehow travel faster than normal, through warp space or hyperspace, or how do I get him there? So I think that's just how he's chosen to depict it.
It's kind of like from the movie, with Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, you're right. It is kind of like that. It's interesting because to me it puts back some of the wonder. I think over time we take for granted some of the things that happen in the comics, that the wonder and the exotic nature of space travel and all these alien cultures becomes commonplace. And one of the things I like about this run in particular is that I do get the feeling of the sensational and the above normal type of environments that Hal is in. And he doesn't treat it that way. To him, it's commonplace still, but for us, it's kind of different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But Hal gets to Ferris Air, and it's interesting. There's a little Easter eggy teasy thing that Hal's been there before. When the receptionist says, "Did I hear the name Hal Jordan again?"
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we don't know what that means yet. The cover obviously gives it away, but Hal walks in with a set of ring-constructed flowers and walks in on Hal proposing to Carol. And it's such an interesting dynamic. And just before Hal's going to interject himself, the Star Sapphire from Earth 11 snatches his body and takes him. Says, you could destroy at least two universes. And here's where the straightforward storytelling starts to go into Morrison territory.
Right. It shifts like quickly too.
Yeah. It kind of cool, but we find out at the end that she's basically tricked Hal to go there because she basically wants him to leave her alone.
And which I still like this version of Carol Ferris too.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's interesting too, as Carol finds out this isn't really Hal, her reactions and his reactions are, I find, hysterically funny. But before we get to that, we see this thing about the Golden Destroyer and targeting someone, and it stops. He was trying to target something. But Hal's reaction is just so funny. I mean, the facial expression of Hal with his hands up and his long face because he's so upset, and he looks like he's about ready to cry.
And what about that shift between the artwork from on Sharp's part? I mean, he's like got almost three different kinds of art happening all at once here.
Absolutely. I mean, you even see like when Star Sapphire grabs Hal, it looks different than the scene on our Earth. He kind of transitions art styles, which I suppose some people might think that's jarring. I think it's trying to help the reader discern difference in locale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it just feels like Sharp he just reinvents the wheel with just about every issue that comes out. And, you and I have always talked about his art since basically issue 1. And it's like, you don't think you could say any more about him as an artist, but I mean, what more can you say about what he produces on any page that he makes every time these issues come out? It's just unbelievable. The guy's got so much unbelievable talent. It's not even funny.
It's interesting because, if you remember back to when they announced this run, everybody, of course, was foaming at the mouth over Grant Morrison. Superstar Grant Morrison's going to write Green Lantern. But I find people commenting more about Liam Sharp's art than the writing.
I would totally agree with that. I remember first catching Sharp's art on Brave and the Bold when he did the Wonder Woman Batman issues. And, like Batman or not, I love Wonder Woman, but his art on those was just beautiful. And fast forward to where we are now, and it's like his art has come such a long way, even from those issues, that he's like transcended everything that he's done before. and he's like at a whole different level than most artists that I've ever read in a comic book.
I'd agree. And this issue, like the scene between these scenes between Carol and the Earth 11 Hal are very drawn, very simplistically and very Silver Agey, but it fits the dynamic of what he's trying to get across here. But I love the interaction where Hal is like, isn't love enough for you women anymore,
right?
and then he's like, you only like the bad guys. I mean, men like me, decent, sensitive, caring. Forget it. And then she starts to realize, you don't move like Hal and you don't smell like him. And then the next sequence about no matter how hard we try, whether ethically sourced aftershave and woke credentials, it's the bad boy you really want. I just started laughing. I thought it was so funny.
It's cute. And then if you notice on the next page, you see what ring what finger the ring is on.
Yeah. I'm not sure what kind of message who that message is to, but I thought it was pretty funny. And it's like the ring is trying to encourage him too.
Yeah. I was like, man, I wonder who that's. I wonder who that's. I don't know. I can speculate on who that middle finger is going to, but I don't know. Maybe it's all the readers who doubt his ability for writing. Who knows?
And the little thing I picked up on in this too, that I'm not really familiar with Earth 11, but I get the impression when Hal makes the comment about the guard calling Carol Ferris, he was like, he called you Ferris as if that was meant to be. That implies to me that on Earth 11, Carol's last name is Jordan and Hal's last name is Ferris.
Oh.
Because he's talking like, I think Hal's looking at it as, well, he was calling you by your married name that we're going to get married. He's already calling you by your married name. It's meant to be.
Huh. Well, that would make sense because it's an all-female Earth.
It's kind of reversed. But you hear the ring egging him on, and then you see this version of Green Lantern's costume, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's cool. I like that GL.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's just a different version of it. And who would have thought, if you think about how many different variations of the Green Lantern costume has been made over the years, this one's just it's got a subtle difference, but the GL part on it, I mean, whoever thought to put those two letters together like he did?
Yeah. And I love the spot where he takes the construct arms, is about to pull Carol in and give him a kiss. And he's like, I'm going home with you as my brushing bride. And she's like, you're dead, mister. And then he plants the kiss on her. And then she's like, seriously, dead. And he knows as soon as he kissed her that she's not the right Carol either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you go into some Zamaron history.
Yep. Oh, there is confirmation. I forgot that. There's confirmation about her being, you think I care about boring workaholic Carol Jordan. So the names are flipped.
Oh, they are flipped. Okay. Well, yeah, there you go.
Yep. But yeah, then we get some interesting history of how Earth 11's Zamaron Owen history takes place.
That's cool. And it shows the Green Lanterns. Looks like they all got that same emblem. You see that?
Yeah. It's kind of neat. And, I mean, they call them patrolmen more than anything else, but it's interesting that, they only choose their chosen sons and so on. It's cool. And then, you see this weird contorted version of Hal and the Star Sapphire from Earth 11. And, basically she was worried about Hal kissing her and that would have triggered things to happen and the golden person would have attacked.
Now, is this Golden Destroyer? I mean, has he appeared before in any kind of Lantern titles? Because I don't remember him.
It's all new to me.
Okay, all right.
All new to me. But they get to Earth 11, and the moon has been attacked. What a wonderful shot! What a wonderful shot. Something hit the moon.
Yeah, that's cool.
And even Hal says, "What's a Golden Destroyer?"
I need some explanations.
And then we see Earth 11's Justice League, which is kind of cool.
Marcia Manhunter.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
That's pretty funny.
It took me a minute to realize that they're all females, like Batwoman, when Batwoman shows up or whatnot.
Only instead of Stargirl, it's Starboy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's true.
And I love the giant vase trying to hold the moon together.
Yeah.
Giant vice, I mean. And then she turns around and she kisses Hal.
Oh, that's right. She did press a smackaroo on him, didn't she?
Yeah, yeah. And then that attracts the Golden Destroyer.
Right, and here he comes. Destroy, destroy.
And we see Miss Terrific. We see the Green Arrow in the background.
Oh, that is him in the background. I didn't catch that at first. I'll be darned.
And Batwoman. And it's not the Justice League, it's the Justice Guild. Excuse me.
Boy, and these different Earths, man. They really, well, Morrison's he's the guy for the multiverse, man. And tell you what, the guy's got a knack for it.
And then the Earth 11 version of Hal crashes on their Earth. And along comes our Star Sapphire. And they kept, I think it's a slightly modified version of the new costume that they gave her.
But it's reminiscent of the original.
Yeah. It's slightly tweaked from what we've seen as of late when we've seen her. But
because it says Carol would never wear that outfit.
Yeah.
Which is, I like it. I think the outfit looks awesome.
Yeah. There's a slight change in the coloring here and there, but I like it. It's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the Golden Destroyer shows up and then grabs our Carol and talks about the Nomad Empire, which is what Zundernell had talked about, was the Nomad Empire is returning. But they're saying that to repossess what's ours. So I'm wondering, is that something on the Zamarin homeworld? Is it the Star Sapphire? I'm not sure.
Well, you notice that when it shows the Golden Destroyer right there on the last page, it says Zundernell and all that coded. See those coded words?
Oh, I did not see that. Great catch.
Yeah.
I did not see that.
Yeah, I was like, where's that code going on there? And then I zoomed in on it earlier when I was reading. I was like, oh, it says Zundernell. And then I remembered that Zundernell was mentioned, he was in the earlier issues.
Yeah, I did not catch that. That's a great catch, Phil.
Thanks, man. I try sometimes.
But then that brings the issue to the end, and we're ready for what he's calling the multi-crisis on intimate Earths.
And we only got 3 issues left.
Yeah. This break in January is going to be difficult.
Yeah, especially with the crap that we got to read in between.
Oh, I'm not buying it.
I don't think I'm going to get involved in it either.
But I thought this was just a fun issue. I mean, there's some heady things in it, but not the mind stretching, really make you have to think kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think like you said earlier, I think the art kind of throws it off just a little bit for some people not familiar. It's awesome. I mean, it kind of threw me off at first, so I had to go through it a couple times myself. But I like the setup for where he's going with it. It's like everything's leading up to those last 3 issues. And I have to expect that Liam Sharp, he's probably going to pull some kind of rabbit out of his hat for these next 3 issues. He is. If he's listening, I doubt he's listening. But I need to message him on Twitter or something like that. It's like, dude, you seriously amaze me every time an issue comes out. He's just reinventing the wheel when it comes to comic book art.
Yeah, I do think, we've talked about this a few times, that this series will read better collected than it does as its individual issues. And I just hope when this is all said and done, we get an oversized format copy of the series in one book.
Hardcover.
Yeah, I just think it would look really nice. Just Liam Sharp's artwork has been so, visually captivating in this entire run that it deserves to be elevated in some manner.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, top notch, man. Just the guy amazes me.
Well, great issue. So let's stop for a few minutes, and when we come back, we'll talk about some other stuff.
All right.
Prepare for a spine-tingling, nerve-shattering podcast featuring all your favorite monsters. You won't believe your ears when you listen to Monster Kid Radio. Here your host, Derek M. Cook, and his ever-rotating stable of guests discuss your favorite classic, and sometimes not-so-classic, monster movies. Subscribe to Monster Kid Radio through iTunes or Stitcher, or visit monsterkidradio.net before the next weekly episode of Monster Kid Radio. Go through the archives for interviews with Sarah Karloff, Victoria Price, and Joel Hodgson. Listen to discussions about movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Island of Terror, and King Kong. And don't forget convention coverage from Monster Bash and the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival. Classic monsters, modern talk, and the head of Rondo Hatton. Only on Monster Kid Radio.
Hey, Phil, my power ring is blinking. How about you?
Yeah, mine's getting kind of, it's going pretty active over here. What do we got?
Ring, play the message.
Green Lantern Myron and Green Lantern Phil, you have incoming transmissions. Would you like me to play them?
Ring, go ahead and play the messages.
The first transmission is from Jason. He's commenting on your recent guest appearance on the Lantern Cast. Transmission playing in 3, 2, and 1.
Hey Myron, second time emailing. I want to quickly say I took a long hiatus from comics, from roughly Justice League vs. Suicide Squad till a few weeks ago. I'm writing this as I listen to the collaboration, and it's been a joy to reconnect with your content and fall back in love with the hobby. I want to comment on the segment of potential for the Green Lantern franchise that you, Phil, and the Lantern Cast covered. It really resonated with me, with Lobo being my Hal Jordan. Having read Lobo's issues in Omega Men, his Legion 89 team book, and then obviously loving the Lantern universe, I think it has ginormous potential. I would like to see the cosmic side of DC split off from Earth and be propped up so much that the cosmic universe would seemingly be separate. DC could still ground all of that with the aliens on Earth, the Justice League, and the Earth Lanterns to still keep it tied to the DC canon. Some of the most iconic events for DC happened in space. I would hope in the future we can see the cosmic universe become what I think it used to be in the 80s and 2000s.
Thanks, Ring, for that message. So this is Jason's second time emailing, and much like myself, he took a long hiatus from comic books as well. But I like what he talks about with the Lobo Lobo's issues in Omega Men and Legion 89. I don't think I remember reading those. How about you, Myron?
I read some of it. I mean, Omega Men originally spun out of Green Lantern, and Legion 89. There was a big team up between Legion 89 and Green Lantern there for a little bit. And one of the things he's talking about is when we were on the Lantern Cast, we talked about how Green Lantern has so often been the gateway to DC's cosmic universe. And I like his point about, wouldn't it be interesting if the cosmic universe kind of left Earth alone and went off and did its own thing? And I can see that to a point. I mean, I think I still miss, I know I miss seeing Hal with the rest of the Justice League and his friends in the Earth superhero community, but at the same time, we're not getting it now.
Well, and not only that, like it goes back. I've said this numerous times that I've always likened the Green Lantern Corps to like a Guardians of the Galaxy kind of thing. And I don't know if there might be some listeners out there who are familiar with Star-Lord. I mean, he's a person of Earth, and he was mixed with this other godlike being. So, but he's always void of Earth. He never goes back there. I don't read the book, so I'm sure he probably visits every once in a while, maybe. I don't even know. But I've always likened those two in comparison. And I always thought a Green Lantern Corps book, series, movie would be set in its own universe, but yet have some canonical tie-ins to the main DC universe, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And the thing is supposedly from the rumors that DC is going to embrace this omniverse concept in which all the stories matter, but things aren't tied together in this tight-fitting, ongoing DC universe continuity. So you could have the cosmic universe kind of being off on its own, but then writers can feel free to use Green Lanterns when they want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
But we'll see.
We'll see.
I agree. I mean, I want to see more cosmic stuff. I want to see the DC universe at large expanded and growing. And I don't know if we're going to get that based on the rumors we keep hearing about, the number of titles are going to be reduced. How do we expand if we're going to reduce? But we'll see. I've often felt like this would be a good place for a digital first series.
Yeah, it's true. They are doing a lot of those with the Superman and the Wonder Woman ones. So yeah, they could even do those with different members of the Corps,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that would be a great place for a Green Lantern showcase or a Green Lantern Corps quarterly kind of thing. We've often talked about an anthology type series that focuses not just on the same characters we see all the time. And that would be a great place to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Jason, thanks so much for contacting us. Ring, why don't you go ahead and play the next one?
The next transmission is from Corey. Corey is talking about the 90s Green Lantern comics. Playing in 3, 2, 1.
Hi fellas. I'm keeping up with all of the current Green Lantern news and solicitations, but I've mostly been living in the early 90s for the last month. If you remember, I wanted to read everything from the Gerard Jones run on Green Lantern, but I went full tilt, GL style, and decided to read everything from that period. It's surprising this era isn't talked about more with the amount of content available at that time. Green Lantern Volume 3, Green Lantern Mosaic, Guy Gardner, and Green Lantern Corps Quarterly. Plus Guy Gardner was in Justice League International and Hal Jordan led Justice League Europe. I think you could probably lump Dark Stars in there too. Most of us miss the early 2010s, but this was a prolific period as well. And, what's also amazing is that DC decided to squash all of this content, ditch the entire Corps, and bet the whole franchise on a completely unfamiliar dude as the new Green Lantern. During Kyle's tenure as the only Green Lantern, did fans think fondly of the early 90s the way we look at the early 2010s, going from so many titles to just one?
Here's something interesting I found. In Green Lantern number 16, in the letters section, called OA, by the way, a reader wrote in about issue number 11 and the storyline A Guy and His Norton said, the first part of Green Lantern number 11 was so weird I thought Grant Morrison had taken over writing chores. Oh, Melvin Young from Singapore, if that was weird, I wonder what you think of Green Lantern now. As always, keep your power rings charged and keep up the great work.
Hey, Corey, thanks for contacting us again. I'm glad to see that you've taken a deep dive into the 90s Green Lantern stuff. It's and obviously all the pre-Emerald Twilight stuff. You're reading all the, Mosaic and Guy Gardner and Green Lantern Corps Quarterly. Your question about did fans think finally in the early 90s the way we look at the 2010s? It's an interesting question, and it's kind of a loaded question because I think that's why you saw the formation of Heat, which was Hal's Emerald Advancement Team. And in fact, I was a member of that. And it was because we lost all of that. And as you said, just to give it to an unfamiliar dude as a new Green Lantern. It was hard for fans to let go of that were really into the Green Lantern mythology because it wasn't just Hal that got silent. It was the entire mythology. All that rich history was gone, and people were really angry about it. Even people who liked Kyle were upset about losing the mythology behind it. So yeah, I think people in that time frame when 1994 hit and Emerald Twilight came out, I think a lot of fans did. I'll be honest with you, I gave Kyle a chance and it didn't really resonate for me, and I left comics altogether because I was tired of how the comics industry was responding to things in the 90s, and that was just the straw that broke the camel's back for me.
Seems like the 90s was rough on comic books,
I mean, there were some good things. I mean, you get the Wally West run and you got some other things, but by and large for me, it was, between the sensationalism and the speculation market almost killing the industry, I'm not fond of the 90s at all. I mean, I like the stuff in the early 90s, but unfortunately, because of the relationship between Gerard Jones and his editor, it kind of all went down the drain.
Mm. He does bring up Guy Gardner in the JLI, and it's funny you mentioned that because it was like I hadn't thought about that title in a long time, and I thought it was a really, really cool title when it was ongoing. I was actually sad to see that go. I remember when it got shelved, and I was like, man, I really like this book. I'm sad to see it go. He makes me want to go back and reread that one just for Guy Gardner's sake.
Well, and that was a lot of the it was a lot of the humory stuff, but it was an interesting take on the Justice League.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where you saw the Booster Gold and Blue Beetle friendship really form and create a solid relationship there. And that's the time when you saw the infamous Batman one-punching Guy Gardner. That whole bit. It was fun in some ways, but yeah, all of that went to the wayside. I mean, that even Alan Scott was affected by that. Alan Scott stopped being Green Lantern. He started being Sentinel.
Oh, that's right. That's when he was Sentinel.
Yeah.
Man, see, I love when people write in and call in because you just bring up a lot of issues that I haven't really thought about in a long time, or you just completely forget about because there's so much to read anyway, and it's like, oh man, I need to go back and revisit that because that was some good stuff.
I sometimes find myself more excited about the old stuff than the new stuff, to be quite honest.
No, you're not wrong, man. I do too, especially stuff that you don't remember that you enjoyed, but when you remember the title, you're like, oh yeah, that brings it back. I do remember reading that. I did enjoy that.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And I love his shout out about what he saw in the letters column about a guy in his Nort and the writer commenting about Grant Morrison. That's just funny. That's just funny stuff.
It is good, man. I like those write-ins when they used to do those. Those were cool.
Yep, I miss the letters pages. I really do.
Yeah, I agree.
But thanks again, Corey. Ring, go ahead and give us our next one.
The next message is from Donnie, the Emerald Enthusiast. Playing in 3, 2, 1.
I love this show so much, despite the bashing of poor Simon Baz. Keep up the good work, fellow ring slingers.
What can I say, Donnie? We love you too. It's always good hearing from you. I'd say I would apologize for the bashing of poor Simon Baz, but I'll say I'm sorry, not sorry. How's that sound?
He's everybody's punching bag, man.
He is. It's all in good love. We all, and Myron and I have always talked about this before, and I'll say it again. We all have our favorites, and we all have our likes, and there's just two characters within the whole realm of the DC universe that I just don't particularly care for at all, period. And it's always him and Batman, and that's just the spectrum I live by. And but hey, there's everybody's got those, and it's okay. It doesn't mean I disrespect the fans of those two characters. I love all the fans regardless. And my wife loves Batman, and I love her unconditionally, even with that. But it is what it is, and that's what makes fandom so fun.
That's right. So, yeah, everybody's got their fans. Just Simon Baz has a lot less of them than everybody else. All right. Well, hey, let's get to the next message.
Here is another comment from YouTube. It's from Jono is Good and is about the last episode. Playing in 3, 2, and 1.
Thanks for reading my comment, guys. I feel like a lot of fans dismiss Morrison's series as too complicated, and it's a shame.
Hey, John, I agree. I think that Morrison, as we've talked before, Morrison challenges the reader, and he doesn't just give you an easy story. And I think some people have a hard time with that. I personally like the challenge of trying to figure out some of this stuff. I feel like I'm getting more for my dollar than I do from a regular comic that I can flip through and read in 5-10 minutes and be done with it. It doesn't require an ounce of thought beyond what's reading the words on the page. I love the deep dive into things. Is sometimes it a little bit of a challenge? Sure. I mean, I think you look at issue 8 in particular, where the whole thing was kind of backwards. It was like a little bit of a puzzle. And as you unraveled it, you started to realize it was something more than what it looked like. And I like that. I don't know what you feel.
I will never, ever cast a negative word on Morrison's writing, insofar that, like you said, he challenges the reader. He makes you think, not only in the box but outside of it. And I'll say that he's not your normal comic book author, and if you're looking for that, go to Young Justice or Legion of Superheroes or something like that, something simplistic, where there is a template that some writers do follow with every issue moving forward, and the next and the next and the next. But I don't think Morrison follows a particular template besides that what's in his head. And to me, when he writes, he makes you invest the time in the reading the content. And I think like you said, Myron, I think you get more out of that and more enjoyment when you have to concentrate on what's happening on the page. And not only that, Liam Sharp challenges you with his artwork.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. And I'm sure I don't catch 90% of what he packs into these issues. But I enjoy looking some of the things up and finding out things about DC history that either I didn't know or didn't remember. Right.
But yeah, I mean, as far as being too complicated, no, I don't think it's too complicated. I just think he's an outside of the box kind of guy, and like him or love him, and that's kind of that's where the spectrum is when it comes to Morrison, and we've said that before with his content. You're either going to like. We don't know what Morrison we're going to get. You're either going to like it or you're not.
Right.
And it is a shame.
Rain, give us the next one.
The last transmission is from Stuart. He's commenting on the last episode and your reviews of the Jeff Johns era books. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
Good show. Hope you guys do some of the core stuff from Gibbons and Tomasi. Hopefully, the next writer after Morrison will keep the focus on Cosmic DC if they want to go more simpler than Morrison. I think the new Guardians run was really good at that, minus the Carol/Kyle thing. Haha.
Thank you, Ring, and thank you, Stuart. Yeah, good show. We love doing it. So core stuff from Gibbons and Tomasi. I'll tell you what, I haven't revisited that in a while. Again, I mean, I always liked Peter Tomasi and Dave Gibbons. It is Dave Gibbons, right? Did I say that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. As far as the next writer after Morrison, I mean, again, this goes back to what we talked about earlier, keeping the focus on Cosmic DC. It'd be nice to see the Green Lantern in its full breadth in the issues of space and different worlds and visiting different worlds for that matter. Kind of like it'd be kind of like The Mandalorian. I don't know if anybody watches that or not. I don't know if you watch it or not, but Star Wars has been good about expanding on their universes and going to see different worlds and stuff. And the Green Lantern Corps has that ability, the same ability, because there's so many different space sectors out there that can be visited. And there's so much content that can be had out of each individual space sector. So, I hope they do some more cosmic stuff. New Guardians was cool, and I'm going to agree with you on your comment about the Carol and the Kyle thing.
Absolutely. I want to go back and reread some of the Tomasi stuff. I think in some ways I enjoyed the Green Lantern Corps book more than the Green Lantern book, and I think Tomasi is one of the most underrated writers that's out there right now. I love what he did with that series.
Yeah, it was a good series.
And I enjoyed seeing a place where we not only got to see John and Kyle and Guy, but the other Lanterns were given equal time. And so we really got to learn more about these new characters and these new Green Lanterns, and they really got to be fleshed out rather than just being a character that's a cameo here or a cameo there. And that's the luxury we get by having more than one title. I do want to go back and reread some of that. Maybe what we'll do is we'll reread, we're doing some of the Jeff Johns stuff right now. Maybe what we'll do when we get to a certain point is we'll flip over and do some of the Green Lantern Corps stuff. Maybe when we get to Sinestro Corps War, because that's when those two books start to intersect. So maybe what we'll do is when we get to that point, we'll go back and do the Green Lantern Corps stuff. And then when we get to Sinestro Corps War, we can do it as one thing going back and forth between them. That might work. And who knows, depending on what happens after Morrison is done, it might be the only thing we talk about on the show.
God, I hope not. But you're not wrong. I mean, you never can tell what's coming. We don't have any inclination of what's on the horizon. So, I mean, you might not be wrong about that.
Right. As if it goes down the road that they were going to go down supposedly with 5G, I probably won't buy any new DC comics, but we'll see. I don't want to be a pessimist. I want to try to be optimistic about this. And there's lots of shakeups and things going on at DC, and nobody knows what's going to happen. So I'm trying to remain cautiously optimistic. Thanks everybody for contacting us. I hope you enjoyed the way that we did the listener feedback this time. If you get a chance, if you have an opinion one way or the other, please let us know. We thought we'd try out something a little bit different and something a little creative that wasn't just Phil and I reading everybody's mail and stumbling over things. It made it easy to try to do it this way, but it's a little bit more work on my end, but I don't mind doing it if it makes it for a better listening experience for folks. And we can have a little bit of fun talking to our air quote power ring.
Yeah, that was cool. When I first read what we were doing, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm down with this. It's nuanced and it adds a little flair to the podcast. I think it's great.
Something different.
Mm-hmm.
But all right. Well, my friend, that wraps up episode number 180. Hopefully we'll have some time to record again before Thanksgiving, which is in a couple of weeks. But if not, we'll try to get another episode in this month for sure. And we'll definitely be revisiting the Jeff Johns era for that next episode.
God, I can't believe Thanksgiving's that short a time away. Wow.
Yeah, I forgot. We're talking 2 weeks. Wow.
Jeez, man, time just goes.
All right, my friend. Well, we will be back hopefully in a couple weeks. If not, maybe 3 weeks. Depends on how the holiday goes. Until then, everybody take care of each other. Please be safe. Treat each other well, and make every day your brightest day. The Podcast of OA is the official podcast of the blog of OA and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can send your emails to podcast@blogofoa.com. You can also find the Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA on Twitter and Facebook. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.